Welcome back from lunch. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker to you, Milinda Ramblestone. Milinda is an executive security leader with extensive experience building and leading security program teams. She has more than 20 years of experience in creating and managing large-scale information security programs in technology, healthcare, and financial services. Most recently, she is a VP and CISO at Bremer Bank. Her focus is the enhancement operational oversight of an enterprise security program for this financial organization. So let's welcome Milinda Ramblestone.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the afternoon session. I promise you it's going to be energizing and interesting. That's my goal today, even though the words security are in this title. So thank you, first of all, for coming. Correct, my name is Milinda, and I am the CISO over at Bremer Bank. But I want to just shift the focus a little bit, and I want to just tell you a little bit about me. And I want to tell you a little bit about my career. I appreciate everything that Stephen just read, but that was super fancy, written by the marketing team, and it's kind of boring. So let's really just get to it and just talk about who is Milinda and get the joke. Who is Milinda? That's a security way. Who is? You can look up somebody and you can look up their website. Who is? That's the security joke. So apparently my security jokes aren't funny, and I know that, so thank you. So there's gonna be more of those, I'm just warning you. So a little bit about me. My career has transcended long time. I actually was planning on going to medical school, and here I am today, the CISO over Bremer Bank. How did that happen? I have no idea. But it really happened because I started in my career building software. I actually worked at the University of Minnesota Medical School while I was preparing to go to medical school, and I just happened to start building software for the medical school. And what was interesting about it was I really didn't know how to build software. I was just building software, right and left, and using all kinds of crazy bad code. And there was a program that came out in the university system in software engineering, and I thought, wow, that's super cool. I'm going to go do that. That's while I'm working on my prerequisites for medical school, because why wouldn't you, right? It was a free program at the time. So I did it, and I just knew by the time I got done that I had to be in software engineering. I loved everything about it. It was where I needed to be. And I spent a good portion of my career, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but a certain number of years, a good number of years building software here in the Twin Cities, actually. It was when I was working for Wells Fargo, that I started architecting fraud-based systems that would monitor the suspicious activity of our customers or the potential suspicious activity. And I was just like, wow, this is where Milinda Ramblestone needs to be. I need to be in security, in software, and monitoring, and looking at all that weird fraud stuff. So that was really how my career pivoted and changed. And since that time, I've worked in a lot of different areas in security. And I just want to be clear about that. I've worked in retail, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in banking, I've worked in education, I've worked in supply chain, just because I have a certain personality type, and I like to go into organizations where I can build something. It needs to be built. I need to be a change agent. I want to use technology, but I want to partner. And those are all really important pieces of the puzzle for who I am. And I give that to you because I want to just give you that foundation of Milinda, because I want to be clear about this presentation. This is not Milinda, the CISO at Bremer Bank. This is just Milinda sharing some experiences that she's had, and I want to just give this as an opportunity for us to talk. I've been at this conference before. I love this conference. I love it because it is a way for us to share as a community, to learn and to teach, and that's exactly what I want to do. So I'm hoping you all will be interested in my topic and be interested in asking some questions. So just know that about me. I'm not going to sell you anything. That's what this slide is saying. I'm not selling diddly, all right? All right, are we good? Yeah. All right, let's go, Milinda. All right, so let's start the deal here. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about why I think security is a business differentiator, and I have a lot of opinion on this. I have a lot of experience on this, both the good experience and the challenging, painful experiences that I've had in my career. And I've worked all over in the Twin Cities, so you can appreciate when I say that I worked in retail. Perhaps there was an organization that had a T in their title, and maybe I worked there during that time when there was that big credit card thing that happened, right? So I know a little bit about that. But I want to talk about that because that got turned, it changed. So it can be a business differentiator. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the benefits are. I'm going to give you a framework. I want to be practical about it. And I also want to talk about how do we accelerate it. Because really, this is about how do we accelerate product innovation. And I've done this throughout my career. Originally, I wasn't intentionally planning on doing it this way. It just happened that we were accelerating the product through security. But now we're at a point where we can accelerate. And I want to just share some of those with you, those points with you. And then I'll open it up for questions. So I know we have enough people here in the room that I want to have you interrupt, but I think we'll have to probably wait for questions towards the end if that's okay, just out of respect for the size, all right? So let's go. All right, so let's talk about this. So why use it? Why use information security as a business differentiator? So let's just get clear, all right? So historically in security, we are the last to know, and it just infuriates me. Why did we not find out about this ahead of the game? Why did we not hear about this when it was being built? Why did we not know about it when it was even in the midpoint, right? And there's just a lot of challenge in that. And I don't know if anybody in this room has ever, when you were in grade school, if you played games and you were recruited to be picked on teams. Anybody the last to be picked? Me too. And guess what? I don't like it. And so therefore I'm going to build a framework that does not allow it. Because at the end of the day, there is some huge benefit, having been in the software engineering world and been in the security engineering world, to coming to the front end, talking about it. And that's really a key point of that, is that there are ways that we can build together. And I am such a fan of the DevOps and DevSecOps environment, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that's key, all right? So we're going to ignore this. We're never going to go to this bad place. We're going to change it and change the model. So that's the key piece of that. So why? There's just a rapid pace of change, and this is why security needs to be a differentiator. We're at the point, from my perspective, this is a huge benefit, is that we're at a point where we are moving at such a rapid pace in product. We are moving at such a rapid pace with tech, in the industries and the supply chains. There's a huge disruption that's happening, and the business climate is demanding it. And we're demanding products be built faster. We're demanding that information is delivered in a quicker way, and all of those key pieces are forcing the changes, whether we like it or not. And really, we still have to do certain things in security. We can't get away from them. We still have to comply. We still have to follow regulations. We still have to secure our organization. And so it's an essential piece of that, but we're moving at such a fast pace. The organizations really need to accelerate it and to deliver in that way. And that's why that partnership with your security program is so key. So we'll continue to talk about that, but just acknowledge that every day in my seat, whether I'm at the CISO at a bank, whether I'm the CISO at a healthcare organization, it doesn't matter what seat I'm in, I get so much demand and so much pressure to move faster. Why are you moving so slow from a security perspective? Why do I have to do it this way? You know, and there's all these different things that I'm having to answer and negotiate and talk about. And so those are key pieces for that. So why use it? Why use security as a differentiator? Really, for me, it's about accelerating the product. It's about accelerating the innovation. I lead with innovation it's one of my core strengths. I lead with innovation. I don't lead to say, you have to do this. You have to do it this way. It's the Milinda way or the highway. No, that's not what this is about. This is about accelerating the product. It's accelerating in an innovative way, and it's working together. And it really, if you do it in that way, it really can be a business differentiator. The second thing, though, is that this is about the security community. Anybody here work in security? All right, just a couple. All right, thank you for showing up. I appreciate that. I appreciate the camaraderie. So the security community, as a security community, we need to adapt our approach. We just do. Whether, and that can be really difficult. And I've worked in all different size organizations. You're moving this machine, and it's slow, and it can be difficult, but it really is about how we work and where we work and what we work with and who we work with from a security perspective. But at the end of the day, our security teams need to adapt and adjust. And as I go into organizations, I regularly have to work with my security teams to help them understand and help bring them along. It's not about telling them do it this way, but it is about helping them understand we're in a new era from a business perspective and they have to adjust. So there's certainly a conversation around that. And the other thing is that if you lead with security in your product innovation, you're really adding in layers of resiliency into your product. It's sustainable over time. It isn't just a one minute kind of a thing. It can last over time. It demonstrates security. It's long-standing, and those are key areas that are extremely valuable to both your external and to your internal customers. So some things to keep in mind and think about. So what are the benefits? One of the things that I think is really important is to educate your organization and to understand from a program perspective at the enterprise level. And I think about security and how security understands the benefit. We get it. We sure wish that everybody else would understand about this, but really it's about educating the organization and educating the enterprise around it. And then, and once you start to do that, once you transcend the other areas of the business, that helps to promote your product at a different level and to raise up the awareness around product and what we're trying to sell. The other thing that I think is a really important highlight is differentiating yourself from your competition. Key piece of this is if you have a strong security program, if you have a security product that leads with security or has strong security built around it, you can really start to differentiate yourself. And if you pause now and just stop and think about all the different products on the marketplace and who's strong from a security perspective, where are they sitting in terms of sales, where versus those that the security is kind of questionable. It really does start to make a difference. And I think about it this way. In my previous roles, I've worked with a lot of SaaS-based organizations, and I cannot tell you how many calls that I've sat on with our customers or potential customers, and I'll talk to them about our security program. Now, granted, it might not have been clean and clear when I first started, but what we would do is we would build it into the products, and we would build it so that it was sustainable, and I could then go off and get certifications. I could get demonstration of that strength, and then I could partner with our marketing team and help them understand. So key pieces of that. Those methods, those communication areas are really key. And then lastly is really around building out your supply chain. And if you think about that, strengthening your supply chain is an important piece of the information security puzzle. And as more and more from a vendor perspective, we get asked these questions all the time. Tell me about your security program. What does it look like? And those are some key product areas from an innovation perspective to think about. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to driving your culture and changing the culture that we're working in. And I think because of this blessed pandemic that we all just went through, the good and the bad and the ugly of it, it really forced a new level of differentiation, and it's giving us this opportunity for differentiation, and that's key. So let's really just talk about this practically. Let's talk about a framework. Now, this framework isn't something that is in a book. This is Milinda's framework. So good or bad, just appreciate it from that perspective. But I will say this framework that I leverage and use, and I'm very, very proud of, is based off of the DevSecOps model. And the reason it's based off of that is because I am really, really keen on helping people understand that everybody is responsible for security. Every single one of us owns security. Isn't just Milinda or Milinda's team, right? It's all of us together from an organizational perspective, from a product perspective, from a technology perspective, from a business perspective, from a marketing perspective. And if all of us are there, all of us agreeing to that, then we can move forward. So I just comment on that note. So in a world where where I call this Melindatopia. In a Melindatopia, in an Agile DevSecOps an organization where we're all working together, there are no silos. There are no silos, right? I hate silos, but they exist, right? So let's break them down. It's an area where you can partner with the business and you collaborate. Those are key pieces. So on that note, we must adopt a mindset of security in terms of foundation, right? So how do you do that? I think about it in a couple different ways. I think about it in terms of people, I think about it in terms of process, and I think about it in terms of technology, that those core areas need to be built and worked out. So to do that, from a people perspective, you have to understand they're your first line of defense. So we better make sure that we have them educated, we have them trained, and are on the same page, getting the philosophy. From a procedures perspective, you better write it down, right? A key piece of that. And then lastly, how are we going to implement it? Those key pieces really make up this security mindset. And at the end of the day, it comes to the question of what are you trying to protect? What are the risks in your organization? And what's important to your business? And that helps drive that security mindset. So if I have a different definition of what we're trying to protect from the organization than the rest of the organization. For example, if I care about security procedures, but my business cares about selling, that's a very different piece. So you have to come into alignment. So getting everybody on the same page is key. On that same note, I think about it also in terms of roles and responsibilities. And so when I talk to anyone in my organization, I always give my roles and responsibilities triangle. And the reason I do this is because everybody wants to solve for everything, but everybody needs to stay within their areas of responsibility. And so I think about it in terms of your business owner, the security ownership, and the technology ownership. And your business owners really are key in driving all of this. Those business owners are driving the business functions. Your security team is saying, these are the areas we want to protect. And the technology team is saying, this is the care and the feeding, and this is how we're going to do this. Those three pieces together, that triangle, have to stay together. They have to stay in a common language. If one of those pieces is missing, that's when you start to get this disruption in your environment, and that's where it gets uncomfortable. So responsibility is key to my model. So let's talk about it then. Let's talk about a security differentiation or a framework around that. So all of these are key components. I'm going to go from left to right here, but I think that they all build and drive some of the areas. So obviously there's regulation that is going to drive your and how you differentiate. When I talk about what's required from a banking perspective compared to what's required from a healthcare perspective as it relates to product, is going to be very different. But those key pieces are important. Do you need to be PCI compliant? Do you need to be HIPAA compliant? They're certified. There's certain areas that you just have to focus on to help you drive the conversation. They're not meant to be thou shalt do them. They're meant to be this is where we're at foundationally from a business perspective, and this is where we can take it. Again, we have to partner. We have to develop that RACI. We also have to understand the business-driven value. What are we trying to provide value with in terms of our outcomes? That's a really important aspect of that, because if you don't understand what the goal is as a team, as an enterprise, then you're going to miss the mark, and most certainly will miss the mark from a product perspective. The other areas that I think are also important from a framework perspective are measurement. You have to measure and build measurement, key measures into your framework, into your innovation. And if you miss measuring, then you're not going to understand what you're building, right? So I'm a big believer in measurement, and I'm also subsequently automate. The more we can automate, the better off we're all going to be, because it's where these manual steps come in that we start to make and miss the mark. And this is definitely true in the security world. So the more we can automate, the more Milinda can sleep at night. That's the way that I selfishly think about it. And then ultimately, if you're measuring and you're monitoring, if you're measuring and automating, you're going to be able to monitor. And I'm a big believer in monitoring consistently, constantly, because you have to have your eyes on the glass to pay attention. So those are key pieces of that. But lastly, and I think this last part of the framework is a really important part, is sharing your success stories. It's one thing to say, hey, we're building, but you're not advertising, you're not selling it. I'm a big believer in celebrating the small, the medium, and the large, because I like the party. I do. I think it's an important part. I think it builds the team. I think it builds the organization, and it brings everybody together. So all of these pieces fit into the framework. All right? All right. So the next thing that I want to just highlight and talk about is, well, so I've given you the what and the why. Now I want to talk about the how. How do we do it? So I have a formula. My formula starts in a circle, and it's obviously going to repeat. It's an iterative one. I start with number 1, and that's the green dot on the screen there, and that is, it has to be business driven. And I say that to you because I've been in this industry for a couple years, and there used to be a time where Milinda may have just wanted to push her agenda without thinking about the overarching goals of the organization. Not that I ever did that, but there may have been a time that I might have thought about it. One of the things I've learned very, very clearly in my career is I need to find business partners. I need to find people who are going to pick me to be on their kickball team, because I was never picked when I was in grade school, so I want to be part of that. And that really just means understanding, what are we doing from a business perspective? What is the driver? What do we need to achieve? Where do we want to go? Really, from a security perspective, being part of the business language versus the techie or the security language. It also means, though, understanding from a business perspective, okay, so we understand where we're going from a business perspective. What do we need to do from a security perspective and a compliance perspective? Those are two very different words. Security controls are the controls that help us stabilize. And then there are all those compliance controls that help us from a regulatory perspective. We have to understand what those pieces are and fit in so that we can move forward in our circle. We have to understand then, after we do that, okay, we have a partnership between big business and technology and security, our triangle. We got to write it down. Who does what? This is really an important piece of that, because the second that you deviate and don't communicate clearly that you have roles and responsibilities and that each person has a clear role, that's when the process starts to break down. And I've seen it happen over and over. Technology gets into the security gets into the technology, the business starts driving security requirements. There are just all kinds of messes that can happen. And so that's why building that collaboration with business, technology, and security is so important. And I'm probably going to say this about 100 times today, but I think it's such an important part. And I walked by a session as I was coming down the hall, and it talked about forming an advisory council on product innovation, and I was like, hey, that's really clever. That's a really important part of that, and that advisory council really should be focused on the roles and responsibilities and what each of us brings to the table, right? So on that note, once we have that in place, then we can build and maintain those business processes and understand, okay, we have product. What are the business processes that we're trying to build out and formulate? Have we defined them? Have we automated them? And that's an important part of that. So once you define, then you can automate. And it's a continuous cycle around building and automating. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is, if you think about security as code or infrastructure as code, there's also a concept of compliance as code, and building that into your product really helps drive that measurement and that talking point for your customers, internal and external. And that really comes down to measuring it and communicating it, and being able to do that regularly, consistently. I'm a big fan of dashboards, and I know that can be a bad word in the DevOps and the DevSecOps world, but I like them because I'm an executive and I like the pictures and all that stuff. But what it also does is it shows to our organization that we really are achieving these pieces of work, that we're achieving this from a product perspective, and it's safe and it's secure. So that's my selfish part of that. And it also helps with one other thing, and I think this is maybe my hidden agenda, is that it really helps to embed it into your organization, to embed security into the organization, into the business culture, and make sure that people are understanding, hey, we're all on the same page, we're all moving together. These are the products or product set that we built. This is how strong it is. This is how our customers are appreciating it. Those are all key pieces of that. And it's this circle. We're circling back, and then we're back to business driven again. Are we still delivering on the business goals? Do we understand what those are? Do we understand the security pieces of that? It really is a formula. And what I think is interesting about this formula is that each piece of this formula is measurable. If you have you can actually create metrics and have a definition in terms of each of these and build out the framework that's right for your organization, right? I've done this framework numerous times, different organizations. Every single time I've done it, way different. Different business product, different teams. Some teams were more willing to come along with me than others. But it all depends on the team and the structure. But the key pieces are there, and I think that they help drive the innovation. And that's really what this is about, is driving the innovation, because we're at a dynamic point in our industry because of the pandemic, because of just because of the forces. We're maturing at such a fast rate that we have to keep up, and this is one way for us to do that. So let's talk about a couple practical things here, because I think it will help. Change curve. We're all familiar with the change curve and where we're at on the change curve. One of my very, very favorite authors is Dr. Stephen Covey, and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of my very favorite rules, I guess it's not a rule. I'm being in security, I made it a rule. It's not, it's a habit. But it's the habit to seek to understand and then to be understood. And that's a very valuable point, and it's something that I have used throughout my career, teaching my teams all about that, because what it does is it pauses the conversation. Instead of just saying, hey, this is what we have to do, it pauses and it helps me understand, where is this person or this group at in terms of the change, in terms of where there's concern, where there's fear. And I work really hard to understand that so that I can help bring them along. I am a believer in teaching and coaching and mentoring in that whole process versus forcing. I am not a forcer. I will never force, because it doesn't sustain, and it's just no fun. So don't like it. I don't respond well to bullies. Additionally, I think there's one other area that's of importance for us to talk about, and that's really understanding who are your stakeholders. And I remind you of this because if you think about understanding where people are at on your change curve, you also have to think about who are your stakeholders and who do you need to communicate to. Understanding that early on, and then communicating with them regularly at the right interval, with the right method and the right approach are key, right? And there's both internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and it's very different depending on where you're at, what products you're producing, who you're communicating with, but always really important. And I share this story with you. I've been at Bremer Bank for about a year and a half, and I came to the organization to help build out a security program that was cloud forward, so we can move to the cloud, which is exciting. But my background is varied based off of the industry, and every industry has a whole different set of stakeholders, a whole bunch of them. And the stakeholders that I knew in healthcare were very, very different than the stakeholders that I now have in the baking industry. And so what I didn't do and should have done sooner was understand that paradigm had shifted. So Milinda learned a little lesson, and it's a good one. I'm not embarrassed about it. I just think it's important. I think it's really self-reflective, and I think it's an important part for all of us. And I just ask you to think about those kinds of things as you're moving through that circle, as you're moving through that framework, and as you're moving through your products, because it's so easy to miss a stakeholder Oh my goodness, it's so easy. And so I just implore you, think about that. Think about the different ways and think about the different mechanisms to help you understand and hone in on that. All right, so let's talk about this. I want to share some last parting thoughts with you, and then I want to make sure that I save time for some questions. So let's focus on a couple different areas of thought. I'm a huge fan of building security into the organization. Obviously, that's my bias. I come to you with that. But I think given the differentiation in the industry, given all of the challenges, given all of the unknowns in our political landscape, in our business landscape, in our product landscape, why not hone in on it? Why not embrace that this is something that can bring comfort, but it also brings clarity, and it brings, from my engineering perspective, precision. And that's one thing that is very, very valuable in terms of your conversation. Another thing that I think is really an important side of it is when you bring security into it. The security team, we always get left behind, right? And you saw my unicorn little picture up at the beginning. But when you bring security in, when you bring those more challenging groups into the conversation, you're all becoming united. And that really is a way to celebrate. And in my world, I really love a good t-shirt. If we can get to a point where we get a success, everybody's getting a t-shirt. And I'm not kidding. I have a history of loving t-shirts, and anybody that knows me knows I love my t-shirts. And because it brings unity. And I think that's a really important part of that. And the reality of it is that these changes are hard. They're hard. They're expensive, but they can definitely be worth the cost. And especially when you think about different products, how products are evolving, pay attention to the security landscape right now and all the different cyber products that are out there. Who's at the front end? Who's at the back end? How are they differentiating? What does that look like? It really comes down to, did they understand their model? Are they doing enough market research, those kinds of things? And how are they building security into their security products? All of those key pieces, but I think it's an important highlight that it's definitely worth it, and you can see that in the product side of it. The one thing that I think too is important to highlight is that accelerating security is not just going to strengthen your security program. As much as I love bragging about how strong my cybersecurity program is, and the quality of it and that we're measuring, it does something else. And this is where it's really, really valuable, is that it strengthens the business, because we're now unifying. Everybody is unifying. Everybody is in the company is wearing the same t-shirt. Right? And we're proud of what we do. We understand that we all own security. We understand the aspects of it, and we're elevating to a new level. And that's a really important piece of the organization. And then the last thing, and I think this is an important part, we just went through a major pandemic, right? And what a Debbie Downer that was. I mean, it was really, really impactful for so many organizations, and it just wasn't fun in the way that we may have known. And I think what's interesting about bringing security in is that we're unifying the organization. We're all now talking the same language. We're all able to resonate in a new way. And that really is an aspect that I think is an important part, but it brings a level of fun to the conversation. And as serious as I might seem all the time, I really do like to bring the fun, and I think that that's just an important part of that. So I want to highlight that key piece of that. And I want to open it up for questions. I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to the time here. I want to thank you, first of all, for taking time to listen to me, giving me the stage from a security perspective in a room full of a really highly qualified Agile people. So thank you for that. But I want to open it up for questions. We've got about 10 minutes here. So yeah.
A number of times when you're talking about business and tech partnership, you said parentheses RACI. I don't think you defined that term.
Oh.
Did I miss this?
Oh, no, you're right, I didn't. Shame on me. RACI. It's the responsibilities matrix. So responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. So when you build out a RACI, you want to understand who's responsible, Who's going to do it? Who's going to do the work? Who's ultimately accountable? Who's on the line there? Milinda's accountable for the security program, right? But I've got other people running it for me. Who did I consult? Maybe I talked with some business lines, but they were consulted. And then who do I need to inform? And that's where the communication piece is so important. That's how you can start to identify your stakeholders, internal, external. Yeah. Great question, thank you. Thank you for keeping me accountable. Yeah.
I have a question. I come from med device and wondering, do you feel there can ever be too much security? Might be a hot take, but.
So that's an interesting question, a trick question. So I think it comes down to what are you trying to protect, right? And so you said you're with a medical advice. So that comes down to safety, right? Patient safety. And I too have come from the healthcare side and the medical side as well. And think about it, it really depends on what are you trying to protect. Have you put enough measurement into place? Have you put enough controls into place for the medical device? That's how I would think about it. Conversely, it might be very different from another industry, but I tend to lean towards no. Yes.
Hi. I think this is kind of related. How do you think about the balance between user experience and security? So I'm on an Agile team that works on a client website. And so our UX person is always saying, we want it to be as easy and as few steps as possible to register for the website, right, or to take a withdrawal. And then we have the security people saying, like, we'd like them to jump through 17 hoops before they take a withdrawal so we know they are the person that we think they are and all that. Right. And so how do you think about the balance of those two things?
What's your industry?
Financial services.
So now we have another area that is getting involved, and that's the regulators, right? Right. The regulations are driving some of those steps. So the answer that I have on this one is you have to have a certain number of steps going through, right? Because of the regulations. However, are there innovative ways that we can embed this so that the user doesn't see all the steps? Some of them you have to do because of the requirements from a regulatory perspective, but some of them I think you could remove or hide them underneath, automate them underneath. So there's probably a balance. Maybe it's not 17, it's 10. I don't know, right? But I do think, you know, the security team is there, but where's your tech team? The security team and the tech team should be working together to innovate an option or set of options for you. If they're not, I'm happy to have a conversation with them. I think that she was a question over here first.
So I was at a conference recently where they talked through embedding an application security role within the product team. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Within the product team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's, so in the world of DevSecOps, that might be how you would see that. So I think about it this way, how I talk about my team. So my security team does the what and the why, right? We will consult with the technology team. And so you might see a dedicated position sometimes. In our organization, we don't have dedicated, but we do have engineers that are skilled in security. Right? And I think you're going to start to see more of that, more and more. Security engineering and software engineering becoming more of that Venn diagram. That's my dream. But I do think it's becoming more common. But it's a more innovative organization where you see that. But I like it. I think that there's a lot of benefit to it. However, I think that that product team then has to continually be working with your information security team to make sure that there's alignment of all the controls. Does that make sense? All right. Did we have one?
Yeah, thank you. Wondering if you could give some examples of ways you sort of helped build that trust between InfoSec and the dev teams. The phrase that's running through my head is, well, yeah, we want them to be able to do more, but what if they don't do it? Right? And any thoughts on things you've seen?
Oh, we only have 6 minutes. I could spend 6 hours. Okay, this is a great question. The way that I'll do that, remember my background was software engineering first. And so what I have seen in a lot of different security groups and tech groups is this level of distrust. And so I'll just go in. I'm rolling up my sleeves, and I'm going to be the one at the table first, meeting with the developers, meeting with the CTO, talking to them, talking their language, understanding what it is that they're doing, and that's really important. And I push my security team to be more like that, right? Because we security will get left behind. We will be that diagram, and I don't want them to be that. So being at the table, understanding what they're working on. And I think the other thing that is really an important side of that is not being the team of no. I will not let my team be the team of no. Absolutely not. We have to understand what is the business goal, and tech can be a business goal. Tech has business goals. Understanding what tech's business goals are, understanding what marketing's goals are, understanding what HR's goals are. It doesn't matter. We have to bridge that gap and build a bridge, and so that's an important side of that. There is no in my organization. I won't let it happen. So, see, I told you I could spend 6 hours. Yeah.
Just a question, and I think it kind of relates to some of the other questions here. Do you have any strategies or tools that you use to help the business understand the risk? Like, I think a lot of these security conversations, the business actually has to understand the amount of risk they're willing to take if they want to put it out, or we do a lot of rapid development. We want to get the thing in front of actual users, and exposing it to 10 users and exposing it to 10 million is a completely different profile.
Right.
And sometimes it's very hard for the business to even understand what risk level they're taking to join in that conversation that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, you need an interpreter. And that means the security team needs to be an interpreter, and if you have a risk department, they should be interpreters, and both of us together should be speaking the language of the business to help them, because you haven't quantified it enough if they can't understand it. That's on security and risk to help quantify it more and partner with you to do that. And it seems like there's probably some additional conversation around it. And the other area is where's the risk being driven from, right? Is the risk a regulatory? Is the risk cost? What is it? Helping understand it in quantifiable ways can help. Does that answer your question? Is there one more? Oh, yeah.
What are the common metrics that you like to show on your dashboard as related to security?
If I had 100 dashboards, I would. So I think about it in terms of there's external threats and there's internal threats that I show. So the external metrics that I'll talk about, how many threats came into the organization, how many did we block, how many incidents that we have, how many did we resolve, things like that. But internally, I might look at the number of phishing attempts. I might look at the number of vulnerabilities we treated, things like that, and building it out in that holistic way. The other thing that I'll add in there is a regulatory set of metrics, because every organization is going to be different, and there's some security metrics that you have to pay attention to in healthcare that are very different than they are in banking. And so understanding what that metric looks like is how you start to build out that dashboard. But ultimately, it comes down to what is the business interested in? What is the organization interested in protecting, and building metrics around that as well. Does that make sense? there's two here.
In the world of cyber warfare, can you speak to coordination with other industries and other organizations in dealing with bad state actors?
Yes. I was just at the Cybersecurity Summit last week here in the Twin Cities, and my peers and I are concerned about this question all the time. And so it's partnering with all your vendors. It's partnering with all these your peers in the different industries. It's understanding what they're doing. It's also about partnering with the federal government, with the state government, and building those alliances. And so you see a lot of that activity happening, and it's only just increasing. Those are the core areas that I'm seeing, and it's an active area. We have one more here in the front row.
I'm just curious. I know you talked about it just a little bit on answering the question on the UX, but in general, how do you coach or mentor your team to keep that customer experience top of mind? Whether it's internal, like we're our own customers, right, or external,
Right.
Because obviously that plays into the overall user experience. But
Absolutely.
just curious, like how is that a topic of conversation that you actively have with your teams?
It's a topic, and it comes down to we're not going to be a team of no. So we need to seek to understand what the business needs, what the business desires, and if we can't get to the actual yes, we're going to come up with a way to help you meet your goal. And I do it all the time because it's not about mandate. Security is not a mandate, though it feels like it. It's about building from a business perspective, and so it's changing the conversation. That's how I do it, and that would be how I would continue to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you listening.